A pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome back to the Vlog-A-Thon 5.0. And now, maybe it's time that I do discuss a few things. Mentally, I have not necessarily been right where I need to be. There could be a point where depression might hit yet again in my life. And there could be a point where it might eventually fall to the very edge, and I might not be able to pull myself back up at some point in the future. Some people out there have really found helpful ways to help us. Victims of any kind of disorder, victims of any kind of trauma, victims of any kind of sociological issue. It doesn't matter which one it is. But ultimately, it just boils down to how you feel and why you feel this way. For someone like me, I've had my good and my bad times all pieced together into a 23-and-a-half-year-long journey through life. Basically starting as far back as the very, very, very preceding turn of the new millennium, the year 1999. It really is quite a time for me to be born in, or even be alive in general. But this barely holds a lot of memory. With more than 2 decades added to the math, the sum itself, the total age rounded up, it certainly has been getting a whole lot more different than you might realize, but maybe that's just what we need to start expecting from now on. But then we could probably go fast forward all the way to today, where I've had plenty of hardships, plenty of big dark moments in my life. Historically speaking, it seems that every single year happens to show a lot of pros and cons. But it does seem, for the most part, everybody happens to show their own personal outlook on every single year. Especially in 2018 and 2019 was when we started seeing a crap ton of videos like this. Of course, everyone likes to share their own resolution on stuff and how the new year should improve or possibly get worse. There's always these predictions that show up, like what the infographics show has shown, for example. They always have a video on why a year will be the best and why a year will be the worst. There's always a best and worst. They can never truly identify what the best in a year is or what the worst in a year is, because simply put, how are you going to pull that off? Psychic powers? The ability to have a vision of the future? It's probably not going to be easy to identify, but maybe what I am ultimately explaining here is just the fact that sometimes we're going to be at a point where we hardly know what we're doing with our lives. Our time, money, social, stigma, personality, activities on a daily basis. There's always something out there for us to share. And I've had to say a lot about my own life as is. And maybe some others might have the same idea or possibly something else. But let's be real here. Have you ever looked into a mirror and realized there could be something that you could have done to change your life? Like you probably could have had a plastic surgeon come by and give you a few shots of Botox to make you look better? Is there ever a time where you could have spent money on surgery to improve your bodily health and function? Is there a time where you could have gotten into your car and given yourself the better treatment, like sticking a Febreze on the vent system? Is there a time where you could look up at the sky and notice that a solar eclipse may have passed by, but you were too late to notice it? Maybe the expectations are high, but that's because everybody is a different mindset, a different personality. a different take on how life should be spent. In terms of my life, full-time work is apparent, of course, but it happens in a completely different time of day. Therefore, it can make me a much more different person than possibly thousands in my own hometown, or possibly in the Providence or region of the country. I, of course, spend a lot of time, like most people would, on such things like social media, streaming platforms, and of course, typing on a keyboard. But for the most part, my time can be well spent at a wise and encouraging level behind a camera and simply giving out what I could possibly say, as honest as possible, patient, devoting, careful. But I do say that sometimes there's always the likelihood that something's gonna go wrong. Maybe tomorrow we could face a burglary in our own home. Tomorrow we could be the victim of a motor vehicle accident, a hit and run felony, a shootout in our own workplace or school. We could potentially end up as the next target for a terrorist organization. We could possibly be in the epicenter of a nuclear blast. We could potentially have anything at all happen to us. Get hit by a truck or crushed to death. But at this point in time, it's just fair to point out, what are the chances of those happening? It could be high or low. Life is always unpredictable here. But nowadays, it's not always going to be easy. But we do need to stand together and keep fighting. There's times where we will eventually boom again, rather than go down. But anyways, this is where I have to once again part in favor of getting new ideas put together, and also to ensure that my channel can be worked on effectively and efficiently without any trouble. And hopefully, we do come out of this strong. Once again and forever. So with that in mind, signing off.